What's going on, everyone? Nick or Catalyst here. Thank you so much for tuning into the video as always, and in this video we will be covering the final installment of the How Not to Suck at Battlefield 1 series, and in this final episode we will be covering how to not suck at aiming, which technically I suppose I could have called my settings video, but a lot of you have commented or said to me, how is your aim so good? How are you able to control the recoil on some of the guns like the new SMG-08 or the Hellriegel? I spray all over the place. Well, a lot of that has to do with the settings that you currently have in the game, and with some games the default settings are pretty good, but in Battlefield 1 the default settings are actually not that great, and you can do a lot of tiny little things such as raising your sensitivity, as we'll get into, that will really develop your aiming skill and drastically, frankly, improve some of your gameplay. When I started tinkering with my settings a little bit past the initial just tweaking with my aiming sensitivity, it really elevated my ability to aim and kill people fast than they would have killed me, and it was a huge jump in my gameplay style. But we will get into all of that in this video. If you like the video, make sure you do drop a like on it. It helps the video out, it helps me out, it helps everybody out, and if you are new around here, why not subscribe? So let's get into this, guys. So just to start off on some of the things that you could be doing right away without tinkering any of the settings that you have in your settings tab, just some initial things that you can do in-game actually before you even start playing. Some warm-ups, if you will, because naturally you're not going to be an absolute laser your first game on for that given day, or after perhaps if you've already played today, you've taken a break for a while, and you need to warm back up. One of the initial things that you can do to warm up your aim is simply just finding the center of your screen by ADSing in an empty server. This gives you a general idea of when you're ADSing on where you're actually going to be aiming, and it is different for all types of TVs and monitors depending on the aspect ratio and also depending on the width of the TV. So that is something that I suggest you do nearly every single time if you are either getting on for the first time in that day or you have taken a break from playing prior to that. Another thing that you can do in this empty server is run what I like to call snap drills, and you'll see me doing it on screen right now. I find a particular point in the map. This point is on Amiens, right by Grandma's house, I like to call that, and there are two doors. There's the blue door to my left, and then there's the white door closer to my right, and what I do is I either walk up to it or I slide, and I try to snap to both targets with my gun as fast and as accurate as I can. And you can see some of them are pretty good, but some of them have not quite reached their mark. But this allows me to kind of just warm up that snapping feeling in case I get into any situations in which there is more than one person in front of me, or I know there is a person in front of me and somebody else surprises me from the side. It really just warms up your general aiming and your fluidity and your speed using your thumbsticks, because unfortunately as console players, or I guess not necessarily console players if you happen to be watching as a PC player, but for us console players it's a little bit more difficult of a task to get that quick snap because we are moving thumbsticks, we're not moving our mouse from side to side. But now getting into the actual settings, one of the first things that you should do is you should turn off the vibration. Yes, it does add effect to the game, but this will drastically impact your aiming, especially if your controller is vibrating all over the place. This one's a pretty obvious point, so I would turn off the vibration. Another additional thing I would do is I would take the camera shake scale all the way down as far as it can go, which is I believe 30%, but you're going to want to lower that down as well, and that reduces the sway of your camera when there is an explosion. So basically these first two things just eliminate all the shakiness or additional things that come with the game that can impact you as far as your controller is concerned, and also as far as your actual gameplay is concerned. Now past that, one of the most obvious things that you can do is you can raise your stick sensitivity, and this is probably the most simple step that you can do, but it's also the most effective step. The default sensitivity for the game is 20%, and you'll see it on the screen now as I try to, spin around and run in a circle. It really drags the camera, and it really feels very, very slow. So maybe some of you have done this already, but if it's at default, turn up your sensitivity. Mine is set to 50%, and if you're not willing to make that quite big of a jump, what I suggest is going in 5% increments, say 20% to 25%, 25% to 30%, and so on. And you can see the result is between, or rather the difference between 20% and my sensitivity, which is 50%. I really have no trouble moving myself around with a speed in which I feel comfortable with, where if I'm at 20%, it feels very, very slow and dragged out. And I do know some players that do play on 20%, but I would rather have the speed than the extra control. And especially if you get used to the speed, the more and more you play with it, you're going to have better control with it anyway, so I would always opt for the extra speed in that situation. And now the next few points are where I might lose some of you, because these are, granted, the biggest steps that I personally had to take in order to increase my aim, make my aim better, and these are the things that might throw you off the most. And the first, and probably the most important, is turning your stick acceleration all the way down. And essentially what this does is, with the 100% stick acceleration, let's say you're aiming to right and then you move directly all the way to the left. What stick acceleration does is it's going to over-accelerate the direction in which you go, and you're going to, I'm not quite sure how other to describe it than this, but you're actually going to go past where you actually want to aim, as with that acceleration. Now, with stick aiming acceleration all the way down to 0%, where you stop moving your thumbstick is exactly where you're going to aim. So essentially what turning this all the way down does is it gives you better control over where you're actually aiming. Although it can mess with you, especially if you are playing with this at 100%. Now, the change is going to be very, very weird for you initially, but this is something that I really highly suggest that you do, because eventually the end goal of all of this is that we want to have precise aim and aim exactly where we want to, especially in sticky situations. And with the stick aiming acceleration on, you're going to actually move past your target in some situations, and then you're going to have to auto-correct the other way. And it's kind of just in that balance, so to speak. The next thing, and this is probably one of the easiest things that you can do, turn auto rotation aim assist off. What auto rotation aim assist does is it allows you to snap to targets, and this is more of a kind of a cushion, I would describe it, for new players in order to learn the game. But for those of you who have been playing this game for a while now, like myself, you realize that you really don't need this, and it allows you to, when it's turned on, it allows you to snap to targets. And I personally think that it's kind of cheap, but I understand the use of why it's in there. I'm going to advise you to go ahead and turn this off and play without the auto rotation. You can very much so keep your aim assist slowdown on. That is the kind of normal aim assist that we're all used to in first-person shooters, where when your crosshairs are going over an enemy, it slows down and it gives you some help with the aim. But in terms of auto rotation, you don't need to snap to targets. You can do that anyways with it off with enough practice and speed, so go ahead and turn that off. Another thing that I would suggest is I would take your L2 and R2 input threshold down. Mine's at 50%. It might be a little bit lower now. I have this footage saved up for a while. It might be a little bit lower now, but essentially the L2 and R2 threshold reduces the sensitivity in which you aim and shoot. With that 100%, you're going to have to put more pressure on the triggers. With it lower, you're going to have to put less pressure on the triggers. So it basically enhances your trigger finger, which is why I suggest that you bring it down. I do not suggest, now, and I have heard people suggest this, such as, I think, the Broken Machine in his video, and a lot of these tips are very in line with his. He does have a very, very good settings video, except for this. I do not believe that you should be messing with the dead zone. I think it should stay exactly the way it is. It's going to throw you off too much, and you're going to give up almost completely, and that is really... I know he plays on console, but that's really more useful for mouse and keyboard, and I think you should just not mess with the dead zone. It's going to put you off more than it's going to help you. If you want to try it, there's nothing that's stopping you, but in my personal belief, I don't think that messing with the dead zone is worth it. And the last thing that I am going to suggest is there is going to be a tab that says Uniform Soldier Aiming, and I know that is very confusing, but you're going to want to turn that on. Now, what is Universal Soldier Aiming? Well, I'm just going to read it straight from the website here. Uniform Soldier Aiming is meant to make your sensitivity feel the same when you switch between infantry ADS sights. When Universal Soldier Aiming is off, if you switch from a close range sight like a red dot sight or an optical sight, and this is from a Battlefield 4 page, so obviously there's no red dots in Battlefield 1, but basically, if you're switching from a close range sight to a long range sight, the sensitivity would be different if you have Uniform Soldier Aiming on. With Soldier Aiming off. With Soldier Aiming on, basically all your sensitivity is the same. If you're using an infantry rifle, it's going to be the exact same sensitivity if you're using a scoped rifle, whereas if it is off, your infantry is going to move slower in sensitivity while your scoped is going to move faster in sensitivity, even though you have a certain sensitivity on. If that makes sense, it's a little bit confusing, but the point is that you should have this on, so all your sensitivity is the same, and you're not playing with different sensitivities, so to speak, when you are switching between, let's say, a pistol and a rifle, or you are switching from a rifle to a submachine gun. And that about wraps it up for this video. Didn't expect it to be that long, but I hope you found something useful in it. If you did, please drop a like on the video. Really appreciate it. And go watch some of the other How Not to Suck videos. There's one on every single class and 2 on the sniper class. I really hope that you enjoyed those videos as well. My name is Nick Catalyst, and I will see you all another time.